Yeah, I can't see a thing in this helmet. Hello to you newcomers and welcome back my lovely subscribers. This is Big Baby Props and I am the Big Baby. Today I'll be showing you guys how to make your own Commander Bly Clone Trooper helmet. We get to see Commander Bly in Revenge of the Sith where he executes Aayla Secura, but also in several episodes of the Clone Wars TV show. I was never really a fan of the mustard-like color scheme, but I think that's mainly because I don't like mustard in general. I cannot, however, deny the fact that the attached micro binoculars make him look like a badass. With that all settled, let's get into how you can make your own piece of Star Wars lore right in your very home. Now with all my helmet videos, we're going to start with 3D printed pieces. For those of you with 3D printers, I've linked the files I used in the description. If you don't have a 3D printer, I also sell the pieces we start with in my shop. Check it out in the description as well. The first thing we need to do is start smoothing out the 3D printer lines. This is an important first step and cannot be skipped. If we tried to paint the helmet right away, the quality would only be a fraction of what it's capable of. To start filling in the lines, we're going to use Rust-Oleum Filler Primer. Now filler primer is much thicker than your regular primer, and it's also sandable. So what we're going to do is give the helmet 3 to 4 heavy coats of filler primer, let the primer seep into the print lines, and then sand it down to a smooth finish. You can go a little wild with the filler primer at this step. Don't worry too much about streaks or smudges, since we're going to be sanding it all smooth anyway. Wait about 20 minutes in between coats, and make sure that you get all the pieces of the helmet. Filler primer excels at filling in a lot of the smaller print lines at once. What it isn't so great at is filling in some of the steeper print lines at the top and bottom. For that, we're going to be using another product called Bondo Spot Putty. Bondo is a very popular choice in the prop making world since it comes out of a tube with a toothpaste consistency, but over a short while will harden to the point where we can sand it smooth. Use Bondo along the thick layer lines of the helmet as well as the seams between the joined parts. This will ensure a smooth transition between the multiple pieces of the helmet. Once the Bondo is hardened over a few hours, we can begin sanding. Sanding is definitely the hardest part of the whole process, so if you can make it through this, the rest is a lot more fun, I promise. For the first round of sanding, I like to use a powered mouse sander. These things are great for getting a bulk of the heavy work done. Just be careful not to sand too far, or you'll shred the plastic underneath. Use a medium grit to make sure it's not too rough. After you've done a quick round with the mouse sander, we can swap to hand sanding. I used a 150 grit pad of sandpaper to get the rest of the Bondo and filler primer the mouse couldn't reach. After that, I used a 300 grit sandpaper to smooth it all out. At this point, you might have realized you missed a spot or two with the Bondo or filler primer, and that's perfectly fine. All you need to do is repeat the filler primer and Bondo steps, and then resand. After I'm happy with the smoothness of the helmet, I usually cover it in one more layer of filler primer, just to get it all in one uniform color, and then sand it again with 300 grit sandpaper. Once you have a helmet you're happy with, we can begin painting, and let me tell you guys, this is where the fun begins. As with most clones, we're going to be applying a base coat of white. We're going to be using a flat white, because I found that if you're going to be weathering the helmet, which we are, the flat white works better at holding on to the grime than a gloss white. Do it in very light coats, since if you have any runs or streaks at this point, you're going to have to sand them down once they've dried. Once our base coat is finished, we're going to be using some masking tape to outline our design. I used a combination of thin masking tape for the edge and thicker tape for coverage. Make sure to tape a bit farther than you think so we don't get any stray paint particles anywhere we don't want them. Once the tape is complete, we're going to add something to help with our weathering later on down the line. That is liquid latex. We're going to brush it on with a cotton swab, and once the latex is cured, we'll paint over it. Then, once the paint is dried, we can peel up the latex with our finger, and this is really going to give the paint the impression of being chipped from damage, a really awesome looking effect. I like to use a cotton swab to apply the liquid latex, and first twist the tip of the cotton swab just a bit. This is going to help in the application to make it more realistic. When done without twisting the top, the latex can be applied in kind of a blobby way, which doesn't really look good once it's peeled off. With the twisted end, you can add more definition to the latex and have the edges be more jagged and random, better simulating chipping. Be careful not to brush on too much latex or it might run down the side of the helmet like it did to me. This will leave you with an unrealistic streak of chipped paint, so we want to avoid that if possible. Luckily for me, it was on the back side of the helmet, so I didn't think it was a showstopper. Let the latex dry for about half an hour, and then we can move on to painting some of the colors. Now Bly's helmet has two primary colors, a yellow and a light brown. We're first going to paint the yellow with the dandelion yellow rattle can. Make sure that your tape is securely fastened to the helmet so no paint seeps underneath and spoils the paint job. Like the white, take your time applying the layers to avoid streaks or smudges in your paint scheme. Now that the yellow is dried off, we can peel off our tape and latex. This is definitely one of my favorite parts of the process, simply because it's so satisfying. Once we've revealed the yellow, it's time to repeat this process with the brown, taping it up, applying latex, then paint. For this I used a warm caramel rattle can. Be sure to paint the binoculars at this point as well. Please enjoy some more untaping footage. Now that we've got it all mostly painted, we can begin the weathering process. The weathering process is vital for giving your helmet an authentic battle damaged look. Luckily, you don't have to be a master airbrusher to get great effects. The supplies we need are going to be pretty simple. We're going to need some gloves, some black acrylic paint, a cup and sponge brush, and paper towels. What we're going to be doing is adding some paint to the cup, then adding a small amount of water to that cup to make a black liquid mixture. Then we're going to paint the mixture over the helmet, letting the paint soak into all the pieces of the helmet. After a few seconds of soaking, we'll follow it up with a paper towel and wipe away a majority of the paint. What's going to be left is a small amount of paint and options around the helmet until we've got the thing as dirty as we like. A nice benefit of this process is you can continue it for as long as you like. Each iteration will make the helmet dirtier and dirtier in appearance, and there are basically an infinite amount of possibilities you can go for. As you're weathering, you need to be careful to watch for streaks. Since we're applying a watery mixture, it's quite common for a streak to run alongside the helmet somewhere you didn't intend to. You need to clean up those streaks as soon as you notice them, or else the paint will dry too far and you'll need to fix it since it doesn't look realistic at all. After you're happy with the weathered finish of the paint, we can move on to our next weathering technique. I'm going to be using a very low grit sandpaper, in this case 60, to really scuff up the paint. The yellow and brown are going to be largely untouched by the black paint and need to be weathered as well. The low grit of sandpaper means it's going to simulate scratches and wear very well. I generally like to add a few scratches here and there, but pay special attention to any sharp edges, since in most cases those are the places the paint is most likely to wear off first. With our helmet nearly finished, I'm going to show you guys the simple way to attach the binoculars to the helmet. We're going to fit the binocular arms inside the pre-made holes and then push one of those like metal foldable things inside. I don't really know the technical name of them, but you might have used them in kindergarten for arts and crafts or in the business world to keep folders or papers stuck together or whatever. Once these are in place, we'll be able to raise and lower our binoculars whenever we want. After they're firmly stuck through, we'll attach the caps so we can cover up the gold pieces, and then attach the earpieces on top of that. The final piece of the helmet will be the visor. For that, I like to use a Hobart face shield as my visor. It's clean, cheap, and definitely looks like the real deal. Find a link for it in the description. So there you go, guys. That is how you build your own Commander Bly helmet from nothing more than some raw 3D prints. Remember to check out the links in the description if you want to complete this project. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you're able to complete this project at home. I hope you enjoyed the little skit at the beginning of the video. Thought I tried things a little bit differently. And most importantly, I hope to see you guys again next time.